Hi, I'm Kopala from Untitled magazine, and today I'm going to be tying my version of the Signature Intruder. Alright, let's get started tying my version of the Signature Intruder. So I'm going to start with a dubbing loop, and I'm going to put a bright colored dubbing. In the fall, I like orange and things like that, orange and pink. In the spring, I use a lot of chartreuse and greens. If you want, you can use a bead and omit this step, and this makes your flies a little bit more dynamic, so you can change the look of the fly on the river. But usually I just dub it. So what we want to do is make a big dubbing ball, something to just kind of hold up the tail portion and give something for the fish to key in on. I'm just going to tie that off. And now we're going to put in the tail. The tail is just a couple of fibers of ostrich. And you want good tips on this. You don't want to use kind of the nasty thick ones down to bottom. And I don't like my tail super long. I maybe like the tail about an inch long. And I'm going to set it in right on top, one loose wrap to collect everything, and then bind it in. And then I usually don't cut much. It just makes the fly a little bit more durable. Alright, next we're going to tie in our body material. I'm using some ice wing that I'm going to wrap around the hook shank. You can dub it if you want. You can use kind of a chenille, whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. Flashabou, crystal flash, anything like that. So I'm going to bring the thread up. I'm going to advance it maybe an inch, inch and a quarter, depending on how big you want your fly. And we're just going to wrap this ice wing around the tube and then tie it off. You want to secure this stuff really well. Most of the time we're casting these flies with two-handed rods, so they're being ripped through the water pretty substantially. A lot of times you're using a Skagit type head, and it really does wear and tear on the fly. So next we're going to make another dubbing loop here, and we're going to put a small dubbing ball in to kind of support some of the other materials that we're going to layer in to give the fly kind of its body. So we'll just put our dubbing into the loop and spin it up. I like the dubbing whirls that are kind of weighted, and you spin them, you pinch the thread and spin them and spin everything up. I think I get a little bit tighter rope, and it's just faster and easier for me. So again, we're going to build another big ball and then tie it off. Trim off the extra. And then put our thread right in front of where that ball ended. And we're going to make another dubbing loop. This fly, with all intruders, you're going to make a lot of dubbing loops. It just makes your life a heck of a lot easier. And now we're going to dub some fin raccoon in. Fin raccoon can be tough to spin in a loop. You want to clip it off the hide. You want to pull out some of the underfur. You still want to leave some bulk, but pull out some of the underfur. That'll make it easier to spin. If you want, you can put some wax on your thread here. I don't. What we're going to do is kind of pull the raccoon out into one decent layer. We're going to insert our dubbing whirl and pull everything down and tight. And then pinch and spin that whirl. And this time, instead of just letting everything go real fast, I'm going to spin it slowly and just pick the materials out as I go so they don't bind up too bad on themselves. And once you start to get it spun up in there pretty good, you can pick a little bit harder. And this is just one of those things that it takes practice. And any of the under fur that you didn't get out before, you're going to pick it out a little bit now. What you want to end up with is a nice kind of rope, a dubbing rope of really long fibers. We want to spin this up really tightly. When things are caught up, it won't spin as well, so just keep on picking. You're going to pick some stuff out, don't worry about it. And that's something that we want there. It looks like a big, awful mess right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to start wrapping this around the tube. And when I start getting to the fibers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pushing everything back like you're folding a hackle over. And we're going to build another big bump of material here. We want as many of these longer fibers going back as we can. I'm just going to wrap this on here. And, you know, it's probably about 2 times the clump of a standard clump of deer hair you'd use, you know, maybe 2 or 3 pencil widths of fur. Now we're going to bind it on here real well. I like to wrap back over it to give it a little more durability. Then I'm going to come in here with a needle and pick it out. Get these long fibers going back. You want it as big as you can get it. You can still pick out some underfur and things like that. And then we're just going to wrap over it to push it back down just a little bit. I want everything going back nicely. So now we're going to bring our thread right back up to that end of our material and make another dubbing loop. You really get efficient at making dubbing loops with when you're tying intruder style flies. So now we're going to take another clump of ostrich for kind of that telltale look of the intruder. You're going to cut it off the rib. I'm going to set it in here. We want it to bisect. I like it to bisect pretty evenly. If you can find kind of the mini spay plumes, they're calling them now, that are small ostrich things, those work real well. You just hackle them on. It's a little bit quicker, but I only have kind of standard ostrich today. And the same thing with the raccoon. So we're just going to start spinning it up slowly and pick it out as we go. We don't want to trap these fibers or anything. And we want to spin it up pretty tightly. Like I said, we don't want to be tying a bunch of these flies because they take a long time. And they use some expensive materials, you know, so we want to tie them well. All right, so then we're going to start winding this around. And as we work our way around, we want to push the fibers back. On some of your flies, you're going to want a really full collar of ostrich. On others, maybe a little bit sparser. You know, it just kind of depends on your river, the fish, you know, what the water conditions are. I like this intruder a little bit more over Ed Ward's because, I don't know, it just, in Wisconsin and things like that, it just seems to produce better for steelhead. The bigger ones I use for kings and things like that, but this one just does a lot better for steelhead and browns and things like that for me. And then we're going to tie off that dubbing loop, trim our thread. I'm going to pick everything out here so it looks a little bit nicer. This is a full ostrich collar. And this one's going to push a little bit more water into those off-color water days. This would be a good one. And then we're going to start building our head. Most of my intruders now, I don't put any weight in them. I let the river conditions dictate what I need, so I'll use split shot or worm weights or whatever the water conditions are for that day. Dictate what I'm going to use, and this makes my flies a heck of a lot more versatile. And then just kind of clean up the front here. We'll put a little bit of dubbing and knot it off. Then you could put some glue or whatever you want, some super glue or something like that on the fly. And then you're all done. So this is my version of the Signature Intruder.